In this video, we will discuss the steps in preparing the worksheet. Okay, so worksheet being a tool in the preparation of a financial statements. So there are two basic information needed in preparing worksheet. Una, you have to have an unadjusted trial balance. And second is the information for adjustments or the adjusting entries. So in this discussion, we have here the unadjusted trial balance of Emiliano Benciorote surveying firm. This is his unadjusted trial balance for March 31, 2020. Okay? And these are the information for adjustments. Okay? So again, for this discussion, we already have here the adjusting entries based on the information here given for adjustments. Again, this is the or these are the adjusting entries. Now, step 1. The account balances of the unadjusted trial balance will be posted in the first two columns of the worksheet. So let's go with the worksheet. So this is the worksheet. Okay. So a worksheet must have, of course, a heading. In this case, there should be the name of the firm. So here it is Emiliano Benciorote Surveying Firm. And of course, after that is the name of the document. So this is worksheet and the financial year end of the firm. So dito, it is March 31, 2020. So sabi sa first step, okay, the account balances daw of the unadjusted trial balance. So let's go to the unadjusted trial balance. So itong mga accounts daw dito, this should be transferred to the first two columns of the worksheet. So ito. Okay? And of course, the very first column of a worksheet should be the account titles. In this case, ito yung particulars. Ayan. So, you have cash, accounts receivable, and so on and so forth. Again, the account balance or the account titles in the particulars is just also based on the unadjusted trial balance. So, kinopya lang natin from trial balance to kung ano yung nasa trial balance, kinopya lang natin to the beginning columns of the worksheet. Transferred. So, let's proceed to step 2. The adjusting entries are entered into columns for adjustments. So, based on the information here, meron tayong mga accounts that need adjustment at year end. Ayan. So, you have to do or you have to prepare adjusting journal entries for this information. Okay? But for this discussion, we already have the adjusting entries. So, as you can observe, may mga letters dito sa gilid per adjustment. Okay? We will use that in transferring said adjustments to the adjustment column of the worksheet. Okay? In order for us to allow cross-referencing and checking if we correctly transferred ba the adjustments to the appropriate accounts. So to transfer such adjustments, let's start off with letter A. Yan. So debit tayo ng advertising expense and credit ng prepaid advertising for 50,000. Okay? So, transfer natin si adjustment A sa ating worksheet. Of course, kailangan natin siya i-transfer dito sa adjustments na column. Okay, so, of course, kailangan natin hanapin ano bang mga account titles ang adjustment na ito. Okay, una, may adjusting expense, advertising expense tayo na naka-debit. So, kailangan natin hanapin sa ating unadjusted trial balance kung may advertising expense ba na account title. So, based sa ating unadjusted trial balance, wala tayong advertising expense. Therefore, kailangan natin dito add ng additional account title sa particular column na advertising expense. Okay, so i-add natin to advertising expense. And since sa ating adjusting entry, naka-debit siya, kaya sa adjustment column, dapat naka-debit din si adjusting expense na for 50,000. Kailangan natin ilagay dito yung reference, yung letter ng adjusting entry na ito for purposes of cross-referencing or checking. Letter A, since letter A or first adjusting entry ito. The corresponding credit is prepaid advertising. So, hahanapin natin dito sa ating unadjusted trial balance kung may prepaid advertising ba na account. So, in this case, meron. Ito. Prepaid advertising credit for 50,000. And of course, yung letter. It's letter A. Again, for checking or cross-referencing. Now, the next adjusting entry, letter B, that's debit ka ng engineering supplies used and credit ng engineering supplies for 205,000. So, to transfer said adjustment sa adjustment column ng ating worksheet, okay, nag-debit daw tayo, let's go back, nag-debit daw tayo ng engineering supplies used. So, sa ating unadjusted trial balance, walang engineering supplies used na expense account. Kaya, we have to add another account title sa ating particular column. Okay? That's engineering supplies used. Okay? Dinebit siya, kaya debit din natin siya ilagay sa adjustments column for 205,000. Again, huwag kalimutan si letter, that's letter B. Now, the corresponding credit for adjusting entry letter B, that's credit ka ng engineering supplies for 205,000. So, hanapin natin dito sa ating unadjusted trial balance kung meron bang engineering supplies na account. In this case, meron. Engineering supplies na 270. So, dito natin ilalagay si adjustment letter B. Of course, naka-debit siya for 205,000. Ayan. So, let's proceed with adjustment C or adjusting entry letter C. Okay. In this case, nag-record tayo ng depreciation. So, as computed, depreciation every year is 100,000. Okay? Kaya, nag-debit tayo ng depreciation expense for 100,000 at credit tayo ng accumulated depreciation survey equipment for 100,000 also. So, transfer natin sa ating worksheet. Ayan. So, hanapin natin si depreciation expense. In this case, wala tayong depreciation expense, kaya add tayo sa particulars ng another account title which is depreciation expense. This is letter C. debit, kaya debit natin si depreciation expense sa adjustment column for 100,000. Ayan. And the corresponding credit is of course accumulated depreciation. Ito. Credit for 100,000. So to transfer, since meron na tayong accumulated depreciation na account dito sa ating unadjusted trial balance, so no need to add another account title. So transfer lang natin, of course, that's letter C sa credit column ng adjustment and for 100,000 also. Now, let's proceed with adjusting entry letter D. Debit unearned survey revenue, credit survey revenue. So as you can see, this is a realization of an unearned revenue. Kumbaga, yung liability mo na unearned revenue, na-earn mo na, kaya you have to transfer it from unearned survey revenue, which is a liability, to survey revenue for 36,000. Again, that's letter D, debit unearned survey revenue, credit survey revenue for 36,000. So transfer it sa ating adjustment column ng worksheet. Hanapin natin dito si unearned service revenue. So may unearned service revenue na tayo na account sa ating unadjusted trial balance. Okay. So since naka-debit siya, debit din natin siya ilagay sa adjustment column. Okay, for 36,000. Huwag kalimutan again si letter. That's letter D. Ayan. The corresponding credit is of course survey revenue. Since may survey revenue na tayo na account sa ating unadjusted trial balance, so no need to add another account. You just directly put the amount of the said adjustment, that's credit ka ng 36,000 survey revenue. Since sa ating adjustment, naka-credit siya. Of course, huwag kalimutan again si letter. Letter D. Now, adjustment or adjusting entry letter E. Debit salaries expense, credit accrued salaries expense. So, ang nangyari dito, nag-accrue ka ng salaries. Okay. So, this is for the salary as an expense that has already been incurred but not yet paid. Okay. Debit salaries expense, credit accrued salaries expense for 190,000. So to transfer it sa ating worksheet, that's adjustment letter E. Okay. So hanapin natin dito kung may salaries expense ba na account sa ating unadjusted trial balance. Yes, meron. Ito. Okay. That's adjustment letter E for 190,000. Debit. Since sa ating adjusting entry, naka-debit siya. Credit, accrued salaries expense. Again, hanapin natin dito kung merong accrued salaries expense ba na account. So, wala. Kaya, mag-add tayo ng another account which is accrued salaries expense. Remember, naka-credit siya. Kaya, credit din natin dito si 190,000 na accrued salaries expense. Let's go back to our adjusting entries. Our last adjusting entries, that's adjusting entry letter F. Debit interest expense, credit accrued interest expense. Okay, so this adjusting entry is to record the accrual of an interest expense for 78,000. To transfer it sa ating adjustment column, sa ating worksheet, yan. So since wala tayong interest expense na account sa ating unadjusted trial balance, we have to add again another account which is interest expense sa ating particular columns. Ito, that's interest expense. Add natin siya. Okay? Since naka-debit si interest expense doon, kaya i-debit din natin siya sa ating adjustment column. Letter F for 78,000. And of course, the corresponding credit for interest expense is accrued interest expense for 78,000. Again, this is an added account title sa ating particular since sa ating unadjusted trial balance walang accrued interest expense na account. Ayan. Now, after transferring the adjusting entries or the adjustments into the adjustment column of the worksheet, you have to check if tama ba yung pagkalagay mo or pagka-transfer mo ng mga adjustments sa iyong worksheet or sa adjustment column sa iyong worksheet. You have to check using the help of the letters per adjustment kung tama ba, kung yung mga nakadebit sa adjusting entries, nakadebit din ba siya sa ating adjustment column, at saka yung mga naka-credit sa adjustments or sa ating adjusting entries, naka-credit din ba siya sa ating adjustment column. And of course, kung nilagay ba siya sa proper account. Okay? So after that, or after checking na tama yung pag-transfer natin ng mga accounts at mga amounts sa adjustment column ng ating worksheet, you have to what? Proceed with step 3. So ito yung step 3. Combine the figures and amounts from unadjusted trial balance and from the adjustments. The amounts are posted in the adjusted trial balance. So ano yung sinabi niya? Okay. After mo daw ma-transfer si adjustments dito and after mo ma-check na tama siya, you have to combine. Okay? You have to combine the unadjusted trial balance and the adjustments. Okay? And the combination of the two will be what? Will be reflected in the adjusted trial balance. So itong portion na ito. So let's do the step 3. Okay? Una, you have a cash. Okay? So your cash unadjusted trial balance has a debit balance of 295,000. Since walang adjustments with regards to cash, kaya copy mo lang si cash na 295,000. Of course, since nakadebit siya sa unadjusted trial balance, pag transfer mo sa adjusted trial balance, dapat nakadebit din. Next is your accounts receivable. Again, as you can see, just like cash, walang adjustment with regards to your accounts receivable. Kaya transfer mo lang din siya sa debit portion ng adjusted trial balance. Ayan. Now, for prepaid advertising, ayan, so 180,000 yung unadjusted trial balance mo. However, in your adjustment column, merong adjustment for prepaid advertising. Remember that a prepaid advertising is an asset with a normal debit balance. Sa adjustment mo, merong credit adjustment. Okay? Kaya it indicates deduction of the amount. Kaya 180,000 minus 50,000, okay? That gives you 130,000 adjusted balance. Okay, for engineering supplies naman, just like your prepaid advertising, okay, engineering supplies is an asset account with a normal debit balance. And since sa ating adjustments, may adjustment siya or may credit adjustment siya, again, it indicates deduction of the account. Okay? Kaya, yung balance mo na lang sa yung advertise or engineering supplies is 65,000. Now, for your survey equipment naman, wala siyang adjustment. Kaya, kung ano yung nasa unadjusted trial balance, copy mo lang. Ayan. For accumulated depreciation, for survey equipment, meron kang debit or credit balance. Since the normal balance of your accumulated depreciation is credit. Okay? So, meron siyang, makikita natin na meron siyang credit adjustment. Okay? So, since yung accumulated depreciation mo has a normal credit balance, and sa ating adjustment, merong credit adjustment, therefore, it indicates addition to the account. Kaya add mo lang yung balance sa adjusted trial balance with the credit adjustment sa yung adjustment column. Ayan. So, the adjusted balance of your accumulated depreciation is now 750,000. Let's proceed with liabilities. Again, liabilities, the normal balance of which is credit. Okay? So, let's start off with accounts payable. So, yung accounts payable mo, as you can see, ito, 240 yung unadjusted amount. Okay? Walang adjustment sa ating adjustment column, kaya copy mo lang. For unearned survey revenue naman, okay, may unadjusted unadjusted amount na 90,000. Since meron siyang debit adjustment, okay, it indicates deduction. Again, because a liability has a normal credit balance, if it has a debit adjustment, thus it means deduction of the account or deduction to the account. Therefore, the net balance or the balance of your unearned survey revenue would now be 54,000. Credit. Next is of course for the notes payable. As you can see, walang adjustment si notes payable, kaya copy mo lang. Also, your capital, in this case, wala siyang adjustment. Kaya, copy mo lang din si capital. Again, capital has a normal credit balance. Kaya, sa ating adjusted trial balance, dapat naka-credit din siya. Ayan. Of course, for your withdrawal, again, your withdrawal has a normal debit balance. And since wala siyang adjustment, kaya, copy mo lang din si withdrawal. Now, for income statement accounts, for revenue, again, revenue has a normal credit balance. Since in this case, meron siyang credit adjustment, therefore, it indicates addition to the accounts. Okay? So, your credit balance of the survey revenue after adjustment is now 6,826,000. Next is for salaries expense. Again, an expense has a normal debit balance. Since si salaries expense dito, meron siyang debit adjustment, kaya it indicates addition to the account. So let's add. Okay. And of course, your rent expense, your insurance expense, utilities expense, and miscellaneous expense does not have any adjustment. Kaya, copy mo lang siya sa debit portion ng or debit column ng iyong adjusted trial balance. Silang lahat until miscellaneous expense kasi nga wala siyang adjustment, as you can see. For advertising expense, wala siyang unadjusted balance pero meron siyang adjustment. Kaya copy mo lang kung ano ang nasa kanyang adjustment portion. Since debit siya, debit mo rin siya ilagay sa column na ng adjusted trial balance mo. Also, your engineering supplies used an expense account na walang unadjusted trial balance, and since may adjustment siya, copy mo lang din. As well as your depreciation expense na walang unadjusted balance, kaya yung adjustment niya na 100,000, copy mo lang din sa debit portion. Your accrued salaries expense naman, a liability account na walang unadjusted balance. Kaya yung adjustment niya, copy mo lang sa adjusted trial balance, particularly in the credit column. Your interest expense, an interest expense is or does have a normal debit balance. Copy mo lang siya kasi nga wala siyang unadjusted balance. So, copy mo siya sa debit portion ng iyong adjusted trial balance. Your accrued interest expense, a liability, has a normal credit balance. Since wala siyang unadjusted balance, kaya copy mo lang din siya sa credit portion ng iyong adjusted trial balance. Ayan. So, we're done with step 3. Ayan. So, na-combine na natin si unadjusted trial balance and adjustments. And na-transfer na natin yung combined amount sa ating adjusted trial balance. So, since tapos na tayo sa step 3, let's continue with step 4. So, step 4, the amounts from the adjusted trial balance are extended to the balance sheet columns and income statement columns. All the assets, liabilities, and equity accounts are extended to the balance sheet columns, and the revenues and expenses accounts are extended to the income statement columns. So, balik tayo sa worksheet. Ayan, eto. So, move lang natin, no, sa gilid para yung makikita natin is the adjusted trial balance. So, ito na siya. Ang sabi ng step 4, you have to transfer na those accounts na for income statement and those account na for balance sheet. Okay? To start off, okay, with cash. Cash is of course a balance sheet account. Kaya si cash from adjusted trial balance, transfer natin siya sa ating balance sheet. Debit siya dito, kaya debit din siya sa ating balance sheet. Next is accounts receivable. Yeah, accounts receivable is an asset which should be transferred to the balance sheet column. Copy natin si accounts receivable. Ayan. Next is engineering supplies, also asset. Copy natin, debit. And also your survey equipment, asset. Engineering supplies pa pala, copy natin. And of course, your survey equipment asset, copy to the balance sheet debit portion. Accumulated depreciation, may credit balance, kaya transfer mo sa credit portion. Okay. Liabilities, of course, accounts payable. credit siya. Transfer mo sa credit portion ng balance sheet. And also your unearned survey revenue, liability, balance sheet, credit. Next is your notes payable, liability, balance sheet, credit. Next is capital, balance sheet, credit. Next is withdrawal, balance sheet, debit. Okay. Survey revenue, income statement, credit. Next, salaries expense, income statement, debit. Rent expense, income statement, debit. Insurance expense, income statement, debit. Utilities expense, income statement, debit. Miscellaneous expense, income statement, debit. Advertising expense, income statement, debit. Engineering supplies used, income statement, debit. Depreciation expense, income statement, debit. Accrued salaries expense, of course, liabilities, balance sheet, credit. Interest expense, income statement, debit. And last, accrued interest expense, liability, balance sheet, credit. So na-transfer na natin yung mga balances ng bawat accounts from the adjusted trial balance to the appropriate financial statement. So yung mga dapat nasa balance sheet, dapat ilagay natin sa balance sheet. And yung dapat for income statement, lagay natin sa ating income statement. Ayan. So to continue, let's proceed to step 5. Ayan. So the total debits and total credits of the adjusted and the adjusted trial balance and adjustment columns are equal. So apply natin, dapat daw sa ating unadjusted trial balance, okay, the total debits should equal the total credits. Okay? So as you can see sa ating unadjusted trial balance, tama siya. Equal si debit at saka si credit. Let's try it sa ating adjustment na column. Kung tama ba si total debit at saka si total credit. As you can see, tama naman. Debit for the adjustment is 659,000 and credit also for the adjustment is 659,000. Now, let's check if the adjusted trial balance, the debit and the credit is equal ba. So, let's check. Yes, equal siya. Okay. The debit portion of our adjusted trial balance is 11,603,000. Okay. And also, the balance of the credit balance of our adjusted trial balance is also 11,603,000. Ito. Now let's go back to step 5. The columns of income statement will be totaled, but the difference will indicate profitability. If the total credit is higher than the total debit, then it generally means the company earns profit. But if the result is opposite or debit, meaning if the balance of the income statement, the debit balance of the income statement is greater than the credit balance, it indicates loss. The company incurs loss. But if the total debit and the total credit is equal, this means the company earns neither loss nor profit. So if the debit and the credit balances of the income statement is equal, then the company is said to be at break even. No profit, no loss. So let us see and let us compute the balances of our income statement, the debit and the credit. So to compute, let's get the debit and the credit balance of our income statement. Okay. As we can see, the debit balance of the income statement is 600 or 6,413,000, and the credit balance of the income statement is 600 or 6,826,000. So it is obvious that the company earns profit because the credit portion of the income statement is greater than the debit portion of the income statement.